Last night, huge election results from the UK. And I'm curious to see how this may impact elections here in the United States in November. George Galloway. Last night, George Galloway lost his seat. Now, I know some of you may be wondering, didn't George Galloway just win his seat? Yeah, it's been about 58 days since George Galloway took that position. And some of you may be wondering, how did he lose his seat already? It appears the election that George Galloway won his seat in the UK, they refer to this as a by-election, right? In the United States, we call it a special election. At that point in time, there wasn't a Labor candidate in the race. So George Galloway won in what we would call a special election. This is now the general election. And we'll get into some of the things that happened. You'll see the comments from George Galloway as well. But what I thought was really interesting is this smear piece of an article from the Times of Israel about George Galloway. Look at the title: Anti-Israel firebrand George Galloway loses parliamentary seat just months after winning by election. Listen to the way they describe George Galloway. Divisive left-wing candidate George Galloway, who ran an election campaign largely focused on capturing the anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian vote for his constituency, loses his seat to a Labour Party candidate. Galloway, the leader of the Fringe Workers' Party of Great Britain. Notice how they say fringe. I told you about that. It's fringe. Was elected to the UK Parliament after winning the seat of Rochdale in Northern England in a by-election just months earlier. So again, the by-election, we will refer to that as a special election. The 69-year-old candidate won the February 2024 by-election after Labour withdrew its candidate, Azhar Ali, due to anti-Semitic comments regarding the October 7th Hamas terror assault. So let's just flash back here for just a second. Remember, that seat at that point in time was occupied by Ali, but that candidate, or was going to be occupied by Ali, but that candidate was withdrawn from the Labour Party. The Labour Party said, we're pulling that candidate because they accused them of having anti-Semitic rhetoric. So the Labour Party, I guess in the short time they have, they didn't submit another candidate to run at that time. So when George Galloway won, there wasn't a Labour Party candidate in that spot anymore. So just something to keep in mind. Going into the general, that was not the case. Galloway, long accused by critics of stoking community tensions, has put the war in Gaza front and center of his campaign in Rochdale, which has 30% Muslim population. In an unusual move, Galloway declined to appear on stage with the rest of Rochdale candidates as the constituency's results were announced. So let's go ahead and get into this here, because I want you to hear this statement from Keir Starmer. It's a YouTube short, so bear with me. They don't let you enlarge these, but I want you to hear this statement from Keir Starmer, and he'll explain to you why he was able to win previously. Listen to this.
Galloway only won because Labour didn't stand a candidate. I regret that we had to withdraw our candidate and apologise to voters in Rochdale, but I took that decision. It was the right decision. And when I say I've changed the Labour Party, I mean it. Obviously, we will put a first-class candidate, a unifier, before the voters in Rochdale at the general election. I put in place.
So Keir Starmer, I should also mention, has been accused of being a spy, by the way. He's a totally propped up corporate candidate. Do not take him seriously. You'll see why later on we get into Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. But of course, George Galloway very much support for the Palestinian people. That didn't start with this election. He's been speaking about this for years. He's anti-war. He's been speaking about anti-war for years. But he noticed something here from the Telegraph. He said they're not even hiding it. Look at this. Goodbye, Galloway. This was a triumph for Israel. So let's all remember Rishi Sunak was the one that decided to move the elections up. Remember we talked about this, that people were freaking out because they said, is he crazy? Why would he move the elections to July 4th instead of letting the time play out because he doesn't have a favorable rating right now? That means that Rishi Sunak was willing to risk his own position just to get George Galloway out. That's the way that I see it. He did not like it when George Galloway won. George Galloway has been heavily critical of Rishi Sunak. He's another corporate propped up puppet. So to me, when he moved that election up to July 4th, I said, oh, that's his way to try to get George Galloway out. And here we are. Don't forget the UK has their own Israeli lobby too. That's not just something that's unique to the United States. So yeah, he's right. They didn't even try to hide it. Very vocal about it. Chide mentioned something that I thought was pretty interesting here because I did post this last night. Chide said the election itself was called mainly to remove George Galloway, even if it meant sacrificing the prime minister. They threw the kitchen sink at it, but he still nearly beat them. So he's responding to what I said last night. And I'll show this to you guys. I said, how did George Galloway lose his seat? He just won recently. Was there a low voter turnout? So if you look at Solomon's tweet here, where he announced that George Galloway lost his seat, we're just going to look at those numbers here. He lost his seat, but he didn't lose by a lot. The Labor candidate, Paul, he received over 13,000 votes, and George Galloway received over 11,587 votes. So he lost, but it's not like he lost by like 5,000 votes or something like that. So that's what he was responding to. And I agree with Chidi. I think this is exactly what happened. They wanted to get him out. And it's really upsetting because I know a lot of us were really excited when George Galloway won. I was one of the first to get on here and talk about it and say, yay, the comeback kid, you know, and now he's gone. And just like that, very quickly. Let's also not forget, Barack Obama was visiting Rishi Sunak not too long ago. And we were talking about that. Why was he visiting the prime minister? What did he have to talk to him about? Oh, I was in town for something else and I just decided to drop by. Really? Really? There was also something else that happened apparently at the polls. George Galloway said our female polling station attendant in Littleborough has just been brutally assaulted outside the polling station where no officer was in attendance. It seems only certain areas are being policed. Her assault is on video. So you have to remember he was running through a third party that he started called the Workers' Party. I wish we had a Workers' Party here, but he was running through that and they were getting a lot of attention, but especially since he won. So these things shouldn't happen. Like people shouldn't have to worry about being assaulted or attacked like at a polling station. Like this is insane. Insane. He did give a thank you to people. I want you to see what George said. I thank the people of Rochdale who gave me 54 sitting days in the last parliament as their MP. Big thanks to my agent, my campaign team, and the thousands who voted for me today. We took the government party to within 1,500 votes and served notice on Labor that we are here to stay in Rochdale. We will field a full slate of council candidates, establish a full-time office there, campaign to reopen the maternity ward and A&E, and keep up the pressure on Labor in the town. So I want to show you something else as well. When we go back to these numbers here, notice there's a party here that the color is like a turquoise blue, says REF. That's the Reform Party. And this candidate, Michael, He received 6,773 votes. And if I were to make a guess, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the people that voted for the Reform Party, if some of those votes probably would have gone to George Galloway. Makes you wonder. Makes you wonder. But I want to show you something else. There was something that Z Squirrel tweeted. It was a video of George Galloway. This one right here. Again, this shows you the Israel connection, how a lot of people were upset with George Galloway because he called out Israel, because he stood in support and solidarity with the Palestinian people. It says a Zionist fanatic at the Oxford Union angrily asked George Galloway if he is racist because of his opposition to the genocidal Israeli occupation. I kid you not, guys. Listen to this.
My question for you is, are you a racist?
Notice how they clapped. Why are they clapping?
Why are you applauding that? What kind of people would applaud that? Am I a racist? You've sat through the last hour and a half of me speaking, and you're applauding someone asking me if I'm a racist? What kind of people are you? Or do you just applaud anything? Would you just applaud anything? You made a better job of it than your friend. I'll grant you that. Talking to me in a language I don't understand and then waving an Israeli flag in my face was not, I suspect, the finest moment that he will experience in what I hope is a long life in public affairs. I'll let you in on something you don't know. I'm one of the few people on the left in Britain who traveled the length and breadth of apartheid South Africa as an underground agent of the African National Congress led by Nelson Mandela, then in Pollsmoor prison in Cape Town. Therefore, the subject of apartheid is particularly important to me. The question of racism is particularly important to me. And in parenthesis, let me tell you this, that throughout the entirety of my time underground in South Africa under apartheid, every house I slept in, every dinner I ate, every car I drove in was provided by Jewish activists of the African National Congress. So Jews don't have to be on the side of apartheid. They don't have to be on the side of racism. Jewish heroes amongst my blood brotherhood, like Dennis Goldberg, who served 27 years on Robben Island in Pollsmoor prison, but who never was able to touch Mandela and his comrades because they were on one side of the apartheid prison wall, and he and a few other Jewish heroes of the African National Congress were on the other. Dennis Goldberg, Albie Sachs, Joe Slovo, Ruth First. Perhaps you've heard of these people. If you haven't, look them up. Jews don't have to be on the side of apartheid. They can stand up against it. And I say to those who imagine that they are friends of the state whose flag was just waved in my face, turn away from the racist apartheid ideology of Zionism. Turn back to where Jews were before the emergence and the hegemony of Zionism. The greatest people on the earth were Jews. The leaders of the socialist, communist, trade union, liberal, Enlightenment, throughout the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, were great Jews. Marx himself was a Jew. None of them believed that as Jews they should go and take somebody else's country and drive millions of them around the world as refugees. All of them would have turned their back against such an ideology. But because of my experience in South Africa, which included, by the way, being battered and bloodied by a Scottish South African policeman called Campbell. It's one of the reasons why I hate Alistair Campbell so much. In Gugulethu police station, in the Gugulethu township in Cape Town, although the policeman had eventually to wash my feet in public, in penitence. But that's another story. Because of my time in South Africa, because of the decades that I worked against apartheid in South Africa, do you imagine that I would turn up at a university and debate apartheid with a supporter from South Africa of the apartheid system? I'd rather punch him in the face than debate with him. Why? Because apartheid is a racist poison. It is the worst kind of fascism. And I would never debate with any supporter of South African apartheid. Why should I debate with a supporter of Israeli apartheid?
Now that was the right time to applaud. Not the first time. That was the right time to applaud. But do you see now why they had to get him out, why they wanted George Galloway out? He was very vocal about it. He has been as long as I can remember before he ran for election. So they said George had to go. It's sad. It breaks my heart, man, because I know a lot of us, we were so excited when George Galloway won. George Galloway, you can still catch him on Moats, the mother of all talk shows. Has an awesome show over there. But it sounds like he's not giving up the fight based on the statement that he released as well. He's still going to hang in there and try to help the people. And that's what it's really about, right? It's not about who can, rub shoulders with the right person, who can, be buddies with Obama and all these cronies, and who can be approved by the State Department. That's not what it's about. It's about who's out there actually trying to help the people and make a big difference. So that's the bad news with the UK elections. Let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Snork. Actually, a circus run by donkeys assholes. Thank you, Wasim. I heard around 8 pro-Gaza independent candidates won seats, especially one who dethroned Labor from a riding that they had control of for 70 years. Yeah. Baby Yaga says, Keir WF loser. Yes. Thank you, Wasim. Plus, Jeremy Corbyn won as an independent. Also, polls show that they voted because they hate conservatives. But other polls show they really disliked Starmer. Thank you for this as well. Lastly, Starmer as a lawyer caused the suffering for Assange. Don't be surprised if Starmer pulls a Biden and Labor does the same screwy things as Dems. I could see that happening. Kukwita, Squirrel X account is based. Love all his posts. I know, right? I always wondered, who is that? And the Oracle says, baby, George Galloway ate the whole room and left no crumbs. 100%. 100%.